Dear witches, staying up to date with the moon? Seeking reminders to re-enchant your daily life? Subscribe to the Modern Witches newsletter for lunar updates and inspiration for working with our personal and collective phases of transformation. Not only do we send out digital spells, astrological insights, and witchy love notes, our newsletter also showcases the incredible magical community that Modern Witches has fostered throughout the years. Have a course or offering you'd like to share with magical babes? Want to share your art with those who will be most touched by its magical themes? Learn more about promoting your work on our newsletter at modernwitches.org/community-marketing. Find the link in show notes. Hello, and welcome to the Modern Witches podcast. I am Casey Zabala, interdisciplinary witch, here with my friend and collaborator, Karima of the Cosmic Vibe.
Hi, everyone.
And this episode is part 1 of our Cancer season series. So we'll be talking about the summer solstice, digging into the energetics of that important festival, and then sort of deep diving into astrological transits and energetics of the season ahead. And it is a doozy.
Yes. I was like, we're like saying just before recording that we knew that Gemini season we talked about it during the podcast, that it was like kind of in between tornadoes, but I didn't realize how crazy Cancer season is and will be. Like, ah, I feel like the- eh, it is great for change. It's great for reflection. It is great to kind of review our goals and our limits and our boundaries and how we take care of ourselves and how we take care of others. Of course, we need those moments in the year. But boy, we're gonna get into it. But it's like,
Yeah, like if we can get to those spaces,
yeah,
that would be great. But I feel like, I don't know, we don't say this explicitly enough probably on the podcast, but like we are in times of deep turmoil collectively. We've got like countless genocides raging, wars escalating. It is not a time when kind of our nervous systems can feel totally at ease, especially for like sensitive, energetic folks, whom you, dear listener, most likely are. And so we're going to be talking a lot about the astrology and everything that's happening and the challenges that come with that. And I just want to give yourself like a moment to take a deep breath into the possibility of that, right? And as Karima said, like trying to orient to the blessings of Cancer season whenever possible.
yeah, because there is some blessing in those highlight or epiphany or moment of clarity that we're going to have, because we have some Mercury Kazemi, we have a Uranus conjunct Mars. We have a lot of moments where we can have those moment of clarity and that kind of we shift us. So taking advantage of those, for some of us it's going to be big, for some of us it's going to be little things, but that are important to feel stable and grounding and feel that we're moving forward and feel hopeful and joyful, because there is some joy coming up. We're going to talk about it again. It's going to be Jupiter and Leo. There's a huge shift for us. So there's good
Hmm.
things happening. We just need to declutter to see the blessings.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about, of course, when the sun enters Cancer on June 21st and is summer solstice. If you want to know more about Summer Solstice and Gather, we are doing our Coven Circle on June 18 online at 11 a.m. on our Patreon. So feel free to join us. It's a fun moment to gather, to express our blessing, to feel connected to one another. And even if it's online, we love those moments when we can see you, and when we can connect as witches. And I want to thank Casey for always leading them.
You're welcome, Karima. It's a treat. It's a nice to be able to come together and For those of you who don't maybe have access to magical community or a coven or spaces where you can just like really express your witchcraft and explore it, the circle's a great place for that because we do guided meditation. There are some journaling prompts, space to chat and ask questions. So do join us and support our podcast via our Patreon.
And for those who wanna connect in person, I think, Casey, you're doing a workshop also?
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you, Garima, for like making me do the work of promoting myself. So I
Put it
will
up,
be,
so
yeah, that's good. I will be teaching or leading a summer solstice workshop on June 21st at Mystic in Mill Valley. And it's a summer solstice vision boarding exercise. And really, it's my vision boarding in disguise because essentially what I'll do is guide us through a grounding and intention setting practice. And then once we have our solstice intentions, we will make a visual spell, our vision board, to kind of ground those intentions and hopefully support the manifestation practice or process. So it should be really fun. It's in Mill Valley at Mystic on June 21st in the afternoon. So from 4 to 6 p.m. And I'll put everything in the show notes for those who are interested. So I've pulled up the chart of the summer solstice here.
Hmm,
The moment that the sun moves into Cancer
yeah.
on June 21st, the sun is in Virgo. We have Mercury and Jupiter also in Cancer, pretty close together there. We have Venus in Leo, Mars in Taurus,
Mhm.
making a trine to the moon. I don't know, looking at this chart, especially, like, as the initiation of Cancer season, initiation of the summer season, knowing that Mercury is about to go retrograde as well.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I don't know, the sort of, like, saturation and holding aspects of Cancer season in the solstice, like, I feel like there's something about really slowing down and making sure that you are kind of like tending to your energy more fully in this moment. And maybe that's kind of like what solstice can be more broadly about for you, if it resonates, is really just like a moment to fortify your energy with water, the element of water, which is such an important element at the solstice. So, like cleansing work with water, blessing work with water, anointing work, you maybe even like making some very special potions at the solstice, which is always like traditionally aligned, just because we have that Mercury and Jupiter there. I don't know, there's something about, like,
Yeah.
honoring through the waters.
And you touch a point about, like, slowing down, that the solstice this year is, I mean, the summer solstice is by slowing down because we know that a lot is gonna happen in Gemini with Uranus and Mars that really going to fast pace everything around us,
Mhm,
and everything's gonna accelerate. And so it's important to always tune in and slowing down, always remember to take a pause, to slow down. Take a pause, gonna be your friend before responding, before acting. All of that
yeah,
is gonna be your friend. And like summer solstice is one of the great turning point of the year. It's the longest day, the moment when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, beginning its beginning to slow down. This is basically this is the highest point, and then it's gonna be a little bit less and less light every day. So there's something deeply magical about standing at the peak of the light and
mhm,
knowing that change has already begun. But Cancer season remind us that light is not only like something we found outside of ourselves. At the sun entering the sign, our attention kind of shift from achievement to nourishment. And
mhm,
so, like we say, slowing down is about nourishment and is all about that's what Cancer is about. Slowing down help us to nourish ourselves, to restore ourselves, sleep is the best medicine you can do for yourself,
Mhm.
and so from visibility to belonging, from the outer world back to the inner sensory, there's a lot of like shift like this that's happening as soon as we come into Cancer season. And it asks a simple, profound question: what sustains us? What
Mm.
sustain you? Actually, what fuel your motor? You know,
Mhm.
and like you mentioned it, this is an invitation to pause and recognize how far also you have come since the last solstice. You know, be mindful of everything you've been doing because we do so much, but sometimes we have a hard time to recognize it. And those moments, summer solstice is definitely about looking at the past 6 months, the past solstice, since the past solstice,
Mhm.
and see like what what did I accomplish? What did I do? Was it more inward? Was it more outward? Was it around my body? Was it about my relationship? It's kind of giving you clue of where things has been growing for you.
Right. I love that. Yeah. It's like Cancer is a very nostalgic sign. So, like, addressing the past being like a really like nourishing thing to do during this time. And I do think there's something about the energy with so much like quickening in the world around us, like making sure you're calling your energy back to your center. This is something that like I've definitely felt called to do for myself and for my clients is like just even setting the intention of like calling your energy back into your center at the end of the day or at an intentional moment in your day where you can like like realize what's yours, what's not yours, kind of
Mhm.
just really recentering. And I can see that being like a potent intention at this moment because we are at the peak of something. And it feels kind of like, especially the rest of Cancer season, there's all these like triggers that go off that really set this new chapter in motion.
And it remind me something we talked about. We often think that transformation happens in a moment of crisis. And it's true. There is a moment of crisis during the month that's gonna happen. And but not all the times. Cancer teaches us to transform. That transformation also happen in quiet moments when
Mhm.
we allow ourselves to receive and when we also gather back our energy, you know. So it's it's also this moment of quietness that transformation happens.
Yeah, I love that. Last thing I will say, just because it feels important, is like Cancer is ruled by the moon. And when we have the sun moving into this like moon ruled sign at the solstice, it's kind of like this beautiful acknowledgement of like the wisdom of the moon and the wisdom of like culture that centers the moon. And so, yeah, just like feeding into that, like really, how can you honor your inner cycles? How can you participate in maybe reclaiming some of that like lunar wisdom in
Mhm.
your life, in your mundane life too?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next there's going to be a couple of transits we're going to run through and not speak so much about because there is so much happening. We're going to dive in deeper into a few of them, but I do want to just name that on the 25th, we have two transits happening. Venus forming a trine to Saturn, Venus at 13 degrees of Leo, forming a trine to Saturn in Aries. Kind of feels like a nice, like, okay, how can you kind of like set some commitments moment? And then also on the 25th, oh, sorry.
No, no, no. I was just confirming that this
Yeah.
training is asking us to commit to what truly matters,
Mhm.
you know?
Which we love. It's such a great prompt. And then also on the 25th, the sun in Cancer will form a square to Neptune in Aries. So also like really challenging, like what is true? What does feel in alignment? That Neptunian influence.
Great for dreamy.
Mhm.
It's a great for like dream, let it yourself drift apart, but it also can bring like a lot of projection and wishful thinking or like kind of thing, like, imagining something is happening, but it's not really happening. Like, like those kind of feelings.
Mhm.
So those days, be careful of what you think is true and what you think, like, wait a little, a couple of days because there's things that's going to be revealed to you. Like when Neptune is in connection like this with the sun, we don't really understand the whole situation.
Yes, which I think, like, speaks to kind of, like, what we're looming towards. The major transit that we're, like, tiptoeing around as we've been talking is this Mars-Uranus conjunction in early July, which we will go into, but it has kind of these, like, deeper historical implications as well as, like, being extremely impactful for us in this moment. And on June 28th, we have Mars moving into Gemini. Let me get there. And this is like setting the scene for its conjunction with Uranus in a week or so. But let's talk about Mars and Gemini. Mars in Gemini. I'm like, oh, I'm like already tired. Oh,
I'm already tired just talking about it too. I'm like, why?
I know. It's like the all the kind of like heat and drive and aggression, like war energy relates to Mars. It's our motivation, it's our battery. And so going into the sign of Gemini is like it it can find us kind of like scattered and where we're putting our energy, right? It can find us like moving in too many directions at once. So that's where the tired or exhaustion kind of comes in for me when I think about it. How about for you?
That's exactly what, like, that's what Mars wants. It wants, when he entered Gemini, it wants movements, it wants answers, it wants stimulation. It's excellent, like, energy for writing because it's very stimulated by it. So it's like
Mm,
it's the idea, the sentence, the words are coming fast.
mm,
It's good for networking and learning and teaching and all those stuff. But like it is the stimulation that can be exhausted for people that are not wired that way. People on
right.
air that are mostly earth, it can be hard because those two elements are not compatible. So it
Mhm.
depends, of course, of your chart and yourself. So for some of us, it's going to be very stimulating. Words become action, ideas become momentum. It's great. And for people who are very earthy, it's way too much. It's way too much
Right.
action. Nothing can stick. Nothing is grounded. It's too out there and it's too much, basically. But Gemini, like we say, can scatter just as quickly as it focuses. So it
Mhm.
but here, Mars can create the feeling that everything is urgent. That's
Yeah.
it. It's like everything deserves your immediate attention. We might find ourselves like starting 10 projects at once, jumping between tabs, basically conversation, responsibility. So
Yeah.
always remember to pace yourself. Nothing is urgent. There is priority. You don't have to do 20 things in an hour. Humanly, no. You can do, like, remember that everything has a step, everything has its own time, and that you don't have to do everything at once. And that's one of the only one advice I can say about Mars entering Gemini. And it,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, it creates mental friction. Let's put it that way. Mental
right.
words too. Yeah.
I would say it, like, is really bringing to mind, like, the fire hose technique that, like, our fascist government is using at the moment, and, like, when Mars goes into Gemini, they're gonna be like, "Let's just distract them with a million news stories so that they don't really know where to, like, put their energy."
Yeah.
So, it's gonna be further complicated too by the fact that Mercury is stationing retrograde on the next day, on the 29th, and so it's almost like Mars going into Mercury ruled Gemini, Gemini stationing stationing retrograde the next day on June 29th. It's like even more of that frustration feeling of like, oh, but I want to do all these things. And Mercury's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I think we
Exactly.
have to feel it out. And like, we don't have all the information. So it's going to be a little angsty, to say the least.
So true. There's a ruler thing happening, with
Hmm.
the Mercury in Cancer that kind of like govern that Mars in Uranus is kind of controlling it because it's like, okay, you have all the things, but how do I feel about it? This is exactly what it is. And because Mars is also preparing to meet Uranus, is moving little by little in early July. So our nervous system may already be sensing also the electricity building up, and we can have having overstimulation and our anxiety can go up. So Mercury starting his retrogression sorry, stationing retrograde, it's actually not that bad for us.
Mm.
It's not as it might be a silver lining, you know, that stop us from this monkey mind that we might have. But on the bright side, I want just to say something that is kind of also nice about Mars and Gemini.
Let's hear it.
It's teaching us also how thought are powerful. That thought
Mm.
can be turned into action. Mars is action. It wants to. It's not only talk, talk, talk. It wants to create. It wants you to put action into your words. And so thought, like I said, become word, words become action, and action create reality. So there's something also very powerful about this Mars entering Gemini for those who have had a hard time to move physically and intentionally and spiritually. There's this little push. And the invitation is not to silence the mind, is more to direct it. That's going to be the challenge.
Mm.
Silence the mind can help do your grounding meditation, do everything. But what it will be more beneficial for all of us is like if we direct our thought, like, okay, I hear you, everything, I hear everything, but I'm going to focus on that. You know,
Right.
that's going to be so helpful. And that's where Mars and Gemini is actually giving us good juju on that.
I love that. Yeah. And maybe there's like you're saying that silver lining with Mercury retrograde is like, okay, actually, going to a more intuitive space for like how you're calculating your decision making and how you're navigating communications might be more of the way forward at this time and support that, you know,
And
Mars and Gemini.
also with this Mercury, we're gonna go deeper into the Mercury station retrograde, but in Cancer, but like those two things that are happening, Mars entering Gemini, Mercury station retrograde, there's like this is pay attention to what you repeatedly say about yourself. Notice the
Mm.
story you tell yourself. Notice the assumptions you make about yourself and people. Notice the future you're speaking into existence. This is very powerful because Mars in Gemini, Gemini words again. This is excellent energy for mantra, for affirmation, for spell writing, for intention setting, and communication magic. So there is something that you like look where you like really, like I said, the narrative that you tell to yourself, the story you tell to yourself. Is it really helping you or kind of self-sabotage? Yeah. It is really
Mm.
interesting to understand that, especially during Mercury retrograde. Is like what story am I re- repeatedly telling that is ready to be rewritten? We need to rewrite our story into that
Mm.
Mercury starts retrograding, and that's reformatting our brain is going to be one of the best tool with Mars and Gemini.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And, Mercury is stationing retrograde at 26 degrees of Cancer. It'll go all,
Yeah, June 20.
yeah, it'll go all the way back to, I think, 14 or 13 degrees of Cancer. So this is interesting to think about because Jupiter was just moving through Cancer. And so maybe whatever was kind of like highlighted or expanded with the Jupiter energy in Cancer needs some refinement
Mm,
during this retrograde period so that you could be kind of like paying attention to those themes.
yeah.
And then also on this day, on the 29th, when Mercury stations retrograde, it's a full moon in Capricorn, folks. So you can also think about like this Mercury retrograde in terms of like a lunar cycle. So whatever happens between this full moon and the next is really going to be kind of like this crucible of revision, reviewing and like reflecting on that Cancer part of your chart and your life.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Jupiter just went through Cancer, but it's still in Cancer. It's at the last degrees of Cancer, you
Mhm.
know? And so this retrograde feel larger than just the typical Mercury retrograde. Is not only about miscommunication or technology glitches. I think it's way more than that. It's about revisiting the emotional foundation upon which future growth. Like, what is the
Mhm.
Mercury in Cancer is your foundation, your emotional foundation, your roots, your ancestral lineage, your knowledge, everything, whatever is your core. And so when Mercury retrograde and Jupiter is in it, there is a chance to expand and to understand ourselves better emotionally and see what are our values, what do we build on. And many people sometimes reconnect with family member, revisit childhood memory, return to the place from the past. There's a lot of that, of course, but there's also a lot of about understanding an old wound through a complete different lens.
Mm. Like, really, like, I don't know, I always think of, like, this question of, like, belonging with, Cancer and especially with Jupiter there. So it's like, oh, like, how am I showing up in relationship to, like, myself and how I arrive here in your incarnation? Very spiritual.
And again, Mercury retrograde is like sometimes not about action. Is is it a retrograde is not fixing everything. It's like it's
Mm.
about listening. It's really about listening. It's and sometimes the most powerful message arrives in the oldest part of ourselves. Cancer can feel like the oldest part of ourselves.
Mhm.
And healings happen when we learn how to tend to it, which is exactly what Cancer do.
Yeah, I love it. Caretaking. Center stage. How do you need to care for yourself at this time? So, and I mean, it's nice to have all these like Cancer themes on this Capricorn full moon because I feel like the moon is like pulling out the lunar wisdom from Cancer, which is the sign of the moon, and sort of highlighting the fact that there's so much repressed and I want to say like villainized, like lunar wisdom ways in the world. And this is the time to really reattune to those things. I mean, we're all witches here. We know what it's like to be vilified for like worshiping the moon. And now is the time when the moon is calling on us all to kind of really petition them with our prayers, especially with Cancer still or Jupiter still in Cancer. Like, how can you kind of practice some kind of like devotional new moon ritual to help us change the course of the tornado, as Karima so
The tornado.
appropriately put it.
I do like this woman. We know that a lot happen right now, like with Mercury retrograde on the same day. But I like this woman because, like, we know it's a full moon in Capricorn, and it's very about the builder, the architect. Remind us that the dream requires structure and that we need to go for it. But what are what we need to remember that the sun is in Cancer, and so that full moon is always also drawn by the other part, which is Cancer. And it's the question is like those dream that we have, the long-term dream, are they still aligned with who we are? Did we change along the way? Did we need to
Mhm.
readjust or realign? Is it emotionally fulfilling? Like, what I mean by that is like the full moon remind us at this moment, especially with the Mercury retrograde in Cancer, that achievement without fulfillment eventually become empty. We need to feel
Mm,
fulfilled. And something that we know like is not gonna feed us, fulfill us, like cancer wise, emotionally, spiritually, gonna really nourish us. Is it worth to pursue? Is it worth to not course correct our path? And if so, it might be against like how you grew up or what you think you're going to become or what you think you're going to do. And so Mercury retrograde here is here to think of that, to restructure that part of yourself.
Mhm.
And we cannot and also this full moon, just to add on, is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in Aries. And guess what? He's doing a beautiful aspect to Venus at the time. And it's fiery. It's about long run. It's about what brings joy. Venus in you is joy. Is what fulfill your heart. It's all go back to the heart. It's all go back to the heart center. What bring you joy? What can fulfill you and keep the fire? Saturn in Aries, the fire, uh, long, like very sustainable in the long years, and not just
Mhm.
big fire that's going to turn off in 2 minutes.
Right.
Actually last. So there's a lot of communication between all those planets, just to say, that ask you to actually realign maybe something in your life that feel misaligned, and that now you someone else with different value, different people around you, different wishes, different dream. And maybe that's the time to reframe them again, to be able to enjoy like the journey of it and not anymore the goal.
Totally. Yeah. It's a big moment. I mean, it's so interesting. I think that, like, everything you said was just, like, so beautiful and I think spiritually aligned, and, like, I can't help but think about, like, the world, and, like, where we are, and the one thing that kinda gives me pause about this full moon is that square to Neptune in Aries. So it's kind of like, I don't know, Neptune is kind of like our vision, but it can also really murky the waters. It's a planet that causes, like, anxiety, and so I do think there's a way in which, like, our primary resistance or limitation comes through our nervous system. Like, are we ready to, like, really position care and nourishment at the core of what we're doing? Or are we gonna let Capricorn, like, just kind of, like, bulldoze away? So, I don't know. I like to think of Neptune as this, like, dreamy ally, but also we wanna make sure that, like, we are in right relationship with Neptune and not getting caught up in somebody else's fantasy or getting caught up in somebody else's delusion about, like, what is right or aligned spiritually. So, it'll be a bit of a test in that way, I think, to kind of really, again, like, attuning to the Cancer. I feel like that feels like the most nourishing area here, as well as that Venus and Leo. It's like, what is the most nourishing thing here for everyone? For, like, the children, right? Cancer. Like, who's taking care of, like, the most vulnerable population here, and how are you doing your part to do the same? It's a doozy.
I love it.
It's a doozy, but an important one, an important full moon, and, like, on the same day, I think, right?
Yes.
Let's look at this.
The same day, yes.
On the same day,
Yeah.
June 29th, Jupiter will move into Leo. So, let's see.
I love that. I'm very excited about that one.
Yeah.
Like,
So this happens late in the evening Pacific time, so it might be on the 30th for those of you on East Coast time, but, yeah, starting a new chapter for Jupiter, which is exciting.
I'm so excited. And like, I think I do think it's a big deal. Jupiter only enters Leo every 12 years. So that is, something that we don't have that much. So if obviously look at the part of the chart that is hitting where Leo is, sorry, is it in your home? Is it in your career? Is it relationship? That will give you clues already of where Jupiter will want to expand. But it's also a major collective shift. And like in Cancer expanded our roots. And now we have Jupiter in Leo expanding our hearts. So the last I feel like the last year has been asking many of us to heal, to protect, to tend, to reconnect with what matters most, because there was so much explosion around the world. So people had to go back to kind of the community, the family, what they can tend to, what they're able to do with their two ends, and just even a little bit to help. And so that was kind of this reconnection. And now we're like, hey, Wonderful. Now, what are we doing with all that we figured it out? We want to grow joyful. Like we want to have as a center joy, children, because Leo is about children. Also, it's about also when I say children, I'm talking about the joy of doing things, the joy of doing a new hobby, a new
Like
creative
inner child almost.
child. Yes.
Mhm.
And it's also about leaders. And our leader is going to be very highlighted with us the next year. And because we cannot, I'm going to talk about this opposition with Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto
Mhm.
in Aquarius is us, you know, Jupiter in Leo is the leaders. So they're going to be in opposition to that. And we're going to see more and more populations against leaders or against the
Mhm.
ideology or not being afraid to stand up more and to say no. And that's going to be a challenge to our leaders because we're going to see also with Jupiter, like I say, expand a lot of things that can be joyful, but it also can expand a lot of things that can be awful. So
Right.
if we have a leader that are tyrannic and abuse their population, we're gonna see it even more. So it might extend that horrific phase. But as extended, the Pluto in Aquarius is gonna put even more pressure into it. So it will be interesting to see, obviously, for different reasons, the next year. But on
Mhm.
a personal level, I do think that Jupiter is in Leo is a sign of creative courage. So it's a sign of self-expression, it's a sign of taking up space. And especially for women is gonna be very important because women we always have, because of how we've been oppressed, this fear of being seen, of being visible, of embody our stuff fully and our energy. And so it's going to be, I can't wait to see that growing for every woman, you know, and be not shy to take up space on stage and to show your wisdom and to show your like really like your gift, even if it's just singing in the little community center. Let's just do it. You know, there's that kind of energy with Jupiter and Leo that's going to be fun to see, I think.
Yeah, it's totally like the spotlight.
Mhm, mhm. Authenticity is very about being authentic to yourself and not be sorry for who you are. It's
Mhm. And a lot of, like, negotiating that because Jupiter will expand whatever it touches. So, like Karima was saying, there's, like, the positive aspects of any sign and the negative ones. And, like, it's so important to think about Leo's connection with drama. There's, like, authentic expression and drama of, like, artistry drama. And if Leo doesn't have that access to be in their drama, like, in their real full expression of authenticity, it will come out in, like, melodrama and, like, catty behavior or narcissistic tendencies. And so, really important to find your Leo stage, whether that's at the community theater, as Karima said, or, like, just, like, in a relationship where you just get to be purely yourself. So, finding your zone of authenticity and, like, really being able to appreciate that, I think is really good.
and a good question.
Again.
Like, if I trusted my gift completely, how differently would I show up? This is
Mhm, mhm. And I think, the opposition to Pluto right off the bat as it comes into Leo and opposes Pluto over here or in Aquarius is really interesting because I think, we've been through the rise of like the influencer cult and like the cult of celebrity. And I think that's gonna like really be highlighted with Jupiter and Leo.
yeah.
Um, but again, with Pluto in Aquarius, it's like, how do we relate to that energy in a way that's like more healthy and less, I don't know, less like obsessive. And I think we're gonna see like the obsession peak with like these celebrities, these leaders, these big personalities with this Jupiter Pluto opposition. But then I think it's going to be really transformed as we see Jupiter moving through Leo. So I'm excited to see what changes.
Yeah,
And
me
yeah,
too.
it'll be fun.
And then we have the famous, the famous
Bada bing, bada boom.
conjunction that
Yeah.
we've been talking about for since the beginning of this episode is on
Mm-hmm.
third, the Mars conjunct Uranus, and I think that's going to be the last transit that we're going to talk about for this first part of Cancer season.
Yes.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it in the first part of this episode because obviously it kind of have this story that is starting since summer solstice that is very we talk about like looking into yourself, making sure that you see what you have been doing since the past 6 months since the last solstice. And Mars and Uranus kind of shake up that piece that we were talking about because again, Mars and Gemini, very active mind. Uranus is upheaval. It can bring good stuff like bad stuff. And we know that Uranus just started its journey in Gemini, is already changing the way of living through media, through AI, through robotic, through like information and how we receive information. So when we have Mars, the disturber, coming and conjuncting Uranus, we're gonna see it in the media. It's gonna be highlighted everywhere. It's not only in our personal life, it's really much about how we're gonna handle the information that's gonna come towards us. And I already mentioned it earlier, but like having pause and not being responsive right away because we don't have the full story is gonna be
Mhm.
so important during that Mars conjunction Uranus. That the story is collective or that the story is in your personal life, having that pause and be able to retract, not responding, even in every urge in your body wants to jump, is gonna be the is gonna help you to understand better what is at stake here, and you're gonna have more information coming up your way. This is just a part of the story. This is not the full story. And keeping that in mind is gonna be very important just for your own sake and for your nervous system because this conjunction is gonna add it's gonna push you to act at every corner, every time. And you're just gonna be in a reaction mode and not in that reflection mode or thinking about how you're gonna say what you're gonna say next.
Mm. Yeah, that's so real.
Eh,
Um, it's like it's a trigger. Uranus, Mars, it triggers everything. And so if you're able to kind of do that pause, that's very wise. This is around a holiday in the US, so it's around our Independence Day, and this transit really hits on the US Sibley chart as well, the Uranus and Gemini. And so there's a lot of historical background on this transit. We talked a little bit about this in one of our episodes with Thea, so I'll link that in the show notes, and you're welcome to go back in and kind of listen to that.
mm,
It tends to kind of, like, instigate violence or, like, trigger, like, explosive moments or, like, big shifts in conflicts. So, this is a time when, like yeah, it's like people will be easily triggered, like, conflicts around us will likely kind of be expanded in some meaningful way or take a surprising turn. So it's a day to watch out for. It's like, I mean, I I'm not a person who tends to celebrate 4th of July because it's not really in my value set, but I would be, cautious about where you're doing that this year
yeah.
with this astrological alignment and knowing cuz like being based in the US, we have a lot more danger at our fingertips here. So, yeah, tread lightly, like be smart, be cautious. And this I would say is going to like be a real turning point for the rest of the year. So, anything that you can do to kind of like make yourself feel grounded around this time, I would encourage that.
Yeah. Yeah, and just also, I will say a warning, like, don't there's so many people, like, predict many just very catastrophic things, and it can be scary, you know?
Mhm.
And so, if you need to step out of all the information about Mars conjuncting Uranus and all the prediction that people do, like, I totally get it,
Mhm.
'cause it's scary. When you look at the past and when you look at now where we are and how what this conjunction can bring and what people are saying, that can be very scary. That can be very scary. Knowing that the
Yeah.
Mars conjunction is exact on July 3rd, but we know that the energy is there
Yeah.
most of the season, you know?
It's one of those things where, like, I feel all that, like, astrological anxiety, and it's, like, so important to remember that this is the study of cycles. Astrology is the study of cycles, and so we can look to history to see what has kind of, like, transpired before. We can look to the collective and understand that, and I don't want anyone to be anxious by any means, but I also want us to be awake and, like, aware of the threads that we're pulling at, and I think with Pluto in the mix in Aquarius, we have an opportunity to arrive pretty powerfully in opposition to whatever's going on, so make sure you're, like, feeling also prepared to make your voice heard, stand up against injustice, because I think that's the assignment for a lot of us. So, this has been a lot. We're gonna end on this, like, tricky territory. Yeah, and we will be back with part 2 of Cancer season, which focuses on the Cancer new moon and more Mercury retrograde energetics. So, thank you for listening. Thank you, Karima.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, blessed be. Take good care. Thank you for tuning in to the Modern Witches podcast. We hope you've been inspired to cultivate your own magic and to craft your own spiritual practices. Let us know what sparked your curiosity by leaving us a comment on this episode or leave us a review. And don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode. Your feedback and engagement truly fills our cups. If you're looking for more ways to gather with your fellow witches, please support our work on Patreon. Learn more at modernwitches.org. Blessed be.